So what makes a marriage? What are the components? What are the ingredients of a marriage? Not even talking about a good marriage, just a marriage. The bare minimum of what marriage demands or what marriage is. The bare minimum is three things. Because like a table, you need three legs. Two won't work. And one is not interesting. So you need three. Number one, the primary beginning of all relationships is generosity or kindness. Kindness, at its very core, is the ability to tolerate another human being. Without that kindness, there is no tolerance. There is no room for another human being. So all relationships, all communication, all contact with the outside world for any individual comes from their capacity for kindness or generosity. To invite another person into your life, into your mind and heart, you have to be generous, you have to be big. You have to be big enough for two. And that is the essence of generosity. A stingy person can only think of himself. And anything that intrudes on himself is painful or threatening. So there's no tolerance for it. Kindness means it doesn't have to be me. It's not all about me. And therefore, if I have food and you need food, of course, I'll give you the food. So kindness doesn't begin with an action, it begins with a state of mind. Is your existence big enough to allow another person? Or will that make it too dense or too cramped and you can't tolerate it? So generosity. And in marriage, when it's a full-time job, it's not like, you feed the poor and go home. The generosity has to be in a number of areas. Of course, you have to be generous with your possessions, with your money, but you also have to be generous with your time and with your space and with your words. I mean, imagine a person who's generous with his money as long as you don't take up his time, or generous with his time as long as you don't invade his space, or generous with his space and his time and his possessions, but he doesn't express himself very well. Stingy with words. These are not helpful in a relationship. So the generosity has to be in all those areas. Of course, there are different degrees of generosity, and it's not important to measure it, on a scale of 1 to 10. As long as there is generosity, there is room for another person. Should there be a need for more generosity, you grow. Marriage is a beginning of a life, not the conclusion. But if you don't have the prerequisite generosity, you can't get off the ground. So the first requirement, the first ingredient in marriage, as in all relationships, is generosity. If you look in the mirror in the morning and you are fascinated by your own face, there's no room for anybody else in your life. But if you look in the mirror and it's getting a little boring, the same face every time you look in the mirror. You want to move on. Now there's room for a new face in the mirror. Now there's room for another person. The second pillar on which the marriage stands, the second leg, is respect or dignity. And this doesn't get enough talk. It doesn't get enough exposure. And it may even be more important than the kindness. It's just that the kindness is the beginning. But in terms of importance, two people living together in the same house day after day, it's a recipe for disaster. How could they possibly not clash, not develop conflict, and not deteriorate into boredom at best, or as the expression goes, familiarity breeds contempt. You get familiar day after day, year after year. And in fact, you're actually looking for familiarity. It's one of the nice features of a marriage is that you're familiar with each other. But at the same time, familiarity breeds contempt. So how does this work? Well, the antidote, or even the preventative, what prevents the contempt from setting in, is respect. A certain sense of dignity. Every person has a certain amount of dignity about them. They won't tolerate degradation, right? Nobody wants to be disrespected because we have a sense of dignity. It's not pride or arrogance. It's a standard that you set for yourself or imagine for yourself. And anything that violates that standard is offensive, painful. So the respect, the self-respect and the mutual respect, the dignity of yourself and the dignity of your partner, of your spouse. The idea that you could be your worst. You don't have to be considerate. You don't have to be careful with your words. You don't have to take any responsibility at all for what goes on in the house. And yet you're going to love each other forever because this is true love. That's a silly notion. You're living together day after day. If you're not at your best, you're going down. You're going down in your own self-esteem, and you're certainly going down in the esteem of your spouse. So to make it difficult for your spouse to respect you is really inconsiderate and also self-destructive. You're ruining it for yourself. Because if your spouse can't respect you, the first thing that goes and the first thing that suffers is intimacy. Particularly for a woman, it is almost impossible to be intimate with someone you don't respect. So what does this respect consist of? Well, you don't read each other's mail without permission. You don't intrude on those areas that your spouse is trying to keep private because it's painful or embarrassing or whatever it is. You give each other some space. That's the antidote to familiarity. Familiarity means no individual space. We're into each other's space too much. So it's not that you're not generous with your space, but even the most generous doesn't give away his last dollar. There's some things that you can't share, not from stinginess, but from pain or embarrassment. You want to keep it private. And of course, you're entitled. You are individuals as much as you are married and become one, but it's two people becoming one. So you got to maintain your dignity. Running around in your underwear, being sloppy, not taking care of yourself, this is not going to help at all. And that carelessness comes from too much familiarity. You've gotten too comfortable with each other so that you don't even consider the effect you're having on each other. You just let yourself go in whatever way. And that is poison. So pillar number 2, or component number 2, is respect. You know, if the doorbell rings and you have to answer the door, you put something on. You don't answer the door in your underwear. Why? Because the guy delivering the pizza gets more respect from you than your spouse? That shouldn't be. I mean, even the expression that people use, you know, if you have to answer the door, you got to get decent. You're going to put something on because you have to get decent, which means before you put that on, you're indecent with your own spouse. So here's a surprising thought. If you're going to be indecent, do it in public, out in the street, but not in your home. Give your home more respect, not less. Your home should be more dignified than the street, not less dignified. You should be more elegant with your spouse than you are with a stranger. But we don't do that. And it causes a lot of grief. I mean, if we take it literally, familiarity breeds contempt. Contempt is a nasty thing. It's a destructive thing. It's worse than hate. I've spoken with many couples who truly hated each other. But with a little adjustment in their thinking and a little change of habit, they're happily married. But when it reaches the level of contempt, much harder to fix. Contempt is really toxic. So if familiarity breeds contempt, then we must avoid that familiarity at all costs. And the way you do that, without getting into the whole nother subject, but the way you do that is, of course, you're familiar with each other in the kitchen. You know each other's tastes. You know each other's preferences. You don't even have to talk about it anymore. In all other areas of life, you know each other. You can anticipate each other's sentence and words. And that's fine. That's one of the benefits of marriage. Comfortable, familiar, safe, secure. The one place where the familiarity breeds the contempt, even if you are respectful, is in the bedroom. In the bedroom, you have to be especially careful not to let it become toxic. And there you have to maintain your dignity. And that's usually where we lose our dignity. So that's something we need to really talk about, maybe dedicate an hour to that. But that for this conversation, let's just say familiarity that is careless, thoughtless, sloppy will not work. Okay, so far, the kindness and generosity, the respect and the dignity make any relationship possible, any long-term relationship. But marriage is not just any long-term relationship. There's something about marriage that is of a different quality. It's of a different universe. It's marriage. What makes a marriage so different from a really good friendship? The best friendship. What makes it different is the sanctity. So the third ingredient, or the third pillar, is sanctity. That's what takes a good relationship and turns it into a marriage. Sanctity means something bigger than myself. That which is sacred is unapproachable, it's untouchable, you can't own it, you can't claim it as your own, it's bigger than you. The sanctity of marriage is that part of the arrangement that is bigger than both of you. And so it can unite you into one. If you're being kind, you have your kindness, your spouse has her kindness or his kindness. Two people both being kind. That is not oneness, that's kindness, which is essential. Mutual respect, you're being respectful, she's being respectful. That's respectful. Two people doing the right thing by each other. But marriage means becoming one. How does that happen? The only way that happens is when two things merge into something bigger than themselves. They can't merge into each other. That's either going to create terrible friction and a backlash, or it's going to turn at least one of the two into a doormat. That's not good. Two people cannot become one unless there is something bigger than the two of them that they can both surrender to. And that is the sanctity of the marriage. And what that means is this. A friendship, you're attracted to certain people, you hit it off with certain people, you get along with certain people, talking to certain people is comfortable and a pleasure, and so you develop a friendship. It's of your own making. And that's why if you should decide you don't want to be friends anymore, you don't need a divorce. You don't need a procedure. You don't need a get. There is no commandment describing how two friends sever their friendship. You just go your separate ways. But to end a marriage, you need a commandment with a procedure. And it's got to be done precisely, correctly, otherwise it doesn't work and you're not divorced. What is the need for that? That's because the marriage is bigger than you, bigger than both of you. So even if you should both decide, we're not interested anymore, we both want out, well, there's that sanctity that you're connected to. How do you disconnect from that? So you can live side by side, disconnected emotionally, mentally, physically, but there is a marriage that binds you together. How do you undo that? For that you need a divinely inspired or divinely designed procedure. So the marriage is divine, and therefore to end it, you need another divine procedure to undo the bond of the marriage. Like, for example, a man says, a husband says, I cheated. But really, what did you expect? Our marriage is not a mess. Our marriage is over. Oh, you're divorced? No. Oh, so your marriage is not over. And the man says, well, technically, on paper, the marriage is not over. But it's over. We're not really married. Is that true? Is that correct? Marriage, if you're not happy with it, is just on paper. So marriage really means I'm happy to stay. That's what marriage means. And if I'm not happy to stay, then there's no marriage. See, that is so mistaken. The marriage is bigger than your happiness or your mood or your opinion. You entered into something bigger and greater than yourself. You can't just walk away because you're in the mood to walk away. That is the sanctity of marriage. And what it means in Torah terms, the marriage was arranged not because you decided to marry this person. The reason you met this person in the first place was because in heaven it was decided that you should be married to each other. Every marriage is a match made in heaven. Otherwise, it's not a marriage. Because marriage means a reunion of two souls that were once one. They were one. They got divided into male and female at birth. In marriage, they find each other and reunite. Marriage is a reunion because, you can't fool Mother Nature. If we are two separate beings, then no amount of rituals and no amount of blessings and no amount of signed documents are going to make you one. You're two people, you don't become one. The only reason two people can become one in marriage is because these two people on a soul level have always been one. So they're going back to the oneness that is their nature. They're not trying to fool Mother Nature. They're rediscovering the reality and the truth of who they are. So marriage is a reunion, not just a union. So if you want to create a union, you can do that with anyone or even anything. You can marry an object, create a union. But a marriage means a reunion. And that's why marriage between Jew and non-Jew doesn't work, because it's not a reunion. A Jewish soul and a non-Jewish soul were never parts of the same soul. So you can have a union, and it can be a very happy union, but by definition of marriage, it is not a marriage, and therefore if they decide to go their separate ways, they don't need a get. They don't need a Jewish divorce. They just have to tell somebody in the country that they're not married anymore. So the sanctity of the marriage is the awareness that I didn't make this marriage. It was made in heaven, and it was orchestrated from above that we meet and that we find each other and that we become one again through the bond of marriage. So what happens when there is a divorce? And this is crucial. People mistakenly assume if a marriage ends up in divorce, then obviously you were wrong for each other. The marriage was a mistake. And now you're terrified that you're going to make the same mistake again if you remarry. No marriage is ever a mistake. A reunion of two parts of a soul, that's never a mistake. It may be too hard to maintain, may be too challenging. In fact, I'm not surprised that it is challenging, because two souls get along fine, but you add two bodies and there's some problems. There's some adjustments to make. So if, God forbid, it ends up in divorce, doesn't mean it was a mistake. It means that what was destined is too hard to maintain. And so God invents divorce, because God invented marriage. And that's why divorce was always seen as a tragedy. If it was just a mistake, okay, people make mistakes. So I married the wrong person. I'm sorry. I'll be more careful next time, and goodbye. Where's the tragedy? The reason it's a tragedy is because this is another part of your soul, and you should be able to be united, but can't. For valid reasons. But still a tragedy, because this is the right person, and you have to divorce the right person. I know what that means. I know what that sounds like. It means that even if you marry the right person, you can be miserable. Yes. Marrying your soulmate doesn't mean you're going to be blissfully happy for the rest of your life. Happily ever after? Got to be careful with that one. So marrying the right person means you are really married. Whether you're happy or not, that depends on how you treat each other and how much flexibility the marriage demands, and sometimes it's just too much. So even if a marriage lasts a week and then it's over because it's just explosive, for that week, the marriage was right. There's no such thing as a mistaken marriage. Einstein says God doesn't play dice with the universe. He was talking about physics. But if that's true in the world of atomic particles, it is certainly true with human beings and their lives. God does not allow a marriage to happen if it's not meant to be. I think this is really very helpful and important. It's why we try so hard to save a marriage, even when it is difficult and somewhat painful. Why do we try to save it? Why do we have a whole industry of marriage counseling and therapists and so on? Why? Because it is worth saving if you can. On the other hand, I don't understand a man and a woman who are simply living together and don't want to be married, and yet they're going for therapy to help them get along with each other. That I don't understand. If you're not getting along, find somebody else. So you're kind of stuck in the relationship as if you were married. You're not getting the benefits of marriage, but you're paying the price as if you were married. What is that for? If you're not getting along, find somebody else. Where is the sin of cheating on a boyfriend or a girlfriend? Dating is not monogamous. A girlfriend is not monogamous. So there seems to be a bigger stigma. If you cheat on your girlfriend, you're the lowest form of life. You cheat on your spouse, well, that's, so yeah, go for therapy. Yeah. Marriage is monogamous. There, you don't cheat. You have a friend, a live-in friend, a roommate. What is that, sacred? So sanctity of marriage means you're involved in something bigger than the two of you. And it's that sanctity that is the ultimate blessing of a marriage. What exactly does a marriage produce? It produces a home. Hollywood has intoxicated us with the love of love, as if love is the highest level of existence and the solution to all our problems and the reason for everything we do. You get married out of love. Children, love. Peace in the world, love. We haven't gotten there yet, but that's how the thinking goes. If we had more love, there would be peace in the world. We should love each other. That's nice. It's not true. In some way, peace is more important than love. Love doesn't kill. The absence of peace can kill. Here's the point. Love is not the most powerful and the most sacred and the most reliable thing in life. Quite the contrary. What is much more powerful than love is home. Think about this, the significance of the word. To be home. Well, yes, you do love it, but it's so much more than your love. You're home. Home means the place where you belong. To know where we belong, to have a place in which we belong, much more powerful than love. You can love ice cream. Or a figment of your imagination. You can love an actor on the screen. That's not home. So home means a place where you belong. Your place. What do you do when you're home? What you're supposed to do. Everything else you do in the course of your life, maybe you should, maybe you shouldn't. Maybe it's good, but maybe there's something better. But what you do at home, there's nothing better. And there's nothing else you ought to be doing. You're doing what you're meant to be doing in the place that is your place, the place you're meant to be. And who are you doing it with? The person you are destined to be with, the reunion. So, look at this. You are where you ought to be, doing what you ought to be doing with the person you ought to be doing it with. That's heaven. No doubts, no anxiety, no second guessing. You're home. We don't have enough of that. Even married people don't feel like they're home in their home. you want to put it in different words. Home is the place you belong, and therefore there's no other place you'd rather be. Now that is a magical moment. When you are somewhere and there's no place else you'd rather be. Doing something and there's nothing else you'd rather be doing. And with a person, there's no one else you'd rather be with. Now you can claim, boy and a girl find each other, they get madly in love, and they're with each other, and there's no place else they'd rather be, and no one else they'd rather be with, and nothing else they'd rather be doing. For the hour. For the day. But marriage is forever. So the reason for getting married is to achieve that oneness, to take away a feeling of homelessness, to take away a feeling of aloneness, which is terrible. The only thing that takes away that state of aloneness is marriage, if the marriage is what it's meant to be. If you're married to each other, not to some activities that you both enjoy. So the couple who love traveling and they travel a lot and they love playing tennis, or they play tennis with each other, and they love playing, doing crossword puzzles or playing Scrabble, oh, they're good friends. But where's the magic? Where's the sanctity? So having common interests is comfortable, it's nice. That's not what marriage is for. In a sense, anything you can get from other people or buy is not what makes a marriage. So love does not make a marriage. The person you're married to is not the only person you're ever going to love. So you can get love from your parents, you can get love from your friends. It's not unique to marriage. So that can't be the definition of marriage. And the same is true with sex. So what is it that makes the marriage unique? It's the reunion, the wholeness of the soul, the cure to the aloneness. So when I first heard from couples, and this is maybe 6 or 7 years ago that this started, or I noticed it, happily married couples, no complaints, no problems, what we would call successful marriage. And yet, they'll each admit that there are moments when they feel completely alone in the world. That was shocking. That was shocking. You know, we have this assumption. A married couple coming from marriage counseling don't like each other. There's friction. They have a parting of ways, they don't think alike, they don't feel alike, and the difference is hurting. So they come for counseling. In a single word, they don't like each other. And that's what the counselor or the marriage counselor is supposed to fix. But when they do like each other, and there is no pain, they just feel alone in the world. That is frightening, because the first thing that marriage is supposed to accomplish is that you're never alone again. If it doesn't accomplish that, something is seriously wrong. And it's not apparent, because they do like each other. They don't want to get divorced. They just suffer silently from this aloneness. That's worse than loneliness. There's a difference. People who are lonely go out to parties. When you're alone, what are you going to do? The party doesn't take away the aloneness. It just takes away the loneliness for the moment. So in that famous song, Piano Man, the line goes, they're sharing a drink they call loneliness, but it's better than drinking alone. Loneliness you can share. Go to a party. But then when you come home, it's not back to loneliness. You're completely alone in the world. Marriage takes that away. The minute you are married, reunited with the other part of your essence, you're never alone, even if you're divided and separated by an ocean. You're not alone in this world. There is the other part, the other half, that worries about you, thinks about you, and needs you. That's an important point. Who needs you? We need to be needed because that gives life purpose, meaning. Life makes sense if you're needed. If you're loved, it still doesn't make sense. So this is what marriage is all about. The reason for getting married is to become one, to merge with another person into something bigger than the two of you. And it can't be just any person. It has to be a part of your soul that got separated at birth. And it is always orchestrated from above. It's always made in heaven. What is made in heaven is not always easy to practice on earth. What works for two souls doesn't always work for two bodies. But it can, and in marriage it does, in most cases, if you do it right. How do you do it right? Kindness, respect, and sanctity. And that's why there are so many laws of modesty and discretion and in the intimate part of a married life, where people say, why do I need God interfering in my bedroom, in my love life? I hate that expression. It's not your love life, it's your intimate life. Love is public, intimacy is private. They're very different. So why would God get involved in my intimate life? I don't need that. Now it turns out we do need it. Without God being an element in our marriage, there's no sanctity. And then it's not really a marriage, it's just a good relationship. And not every good relationship can last a lifetime. So that's the sanctity part. The kindness, the respect, those are indispensable. So before going for marriage counseling, if you feel that you need it, just ask yourself individually, not with each other, because one of you can make the marriage better for both of you. It doesn't have to be discussed as a couple. Ask yourself, can I be a little more generous? Do I need to be a little more generous? Can I be a little more dignified? Am I making it hard for my spouse to respect me? Don't ask. Just check it out yourself. And if you become a little more modest, a little more dignified in your intimate life, even if that wasn't the problem, it can't hurt. It'll only make it better. And then, where's the sanctity? Where's the sanctity? What makes your life together something bigger than just a roommate? Work on those three things, and maybe you don't need marriage counseling. One of you can make it better for both of you. The objective, of course, is to establish a home. A home where there's no place else you'd rather be, nothing else you'd rather be doing, and no one else you'd rather be with. That truly is heaven. Because what do you think heaven is? A soul comes back to the world of souls where it belongs. That's its native habitat, its natural habitat. It is there with souls of equal interests or equal values and whatever. You're home. The soul goes home. That's heaven. Well, the body should be able to do that too. Physical home. And what's so heavenly about it is that serenity that comes from certainty. No doubt. I'm home. This is where I belong, no doubt. Therefore, no place else I'd rather be. I'm doing what I'm supposed to be doing with my family, with my children, with my home, no doubt. And I'm with the person I'm meant to be, there's no doubt. And therefore, there's no one else I'd rather be. So the fact that there are smarter people out there, there are more beautiful people out there, so what? There's no one else for me. That's marriage. It's not because I love my wife more than any other woman. It's not because she is the most gorgeous in the world, or she is there's no contest. There is no one else. This is my soulmate. Everybody else can be beautiful and attractive and smart and good for them. It doesn't create doubts or insecurities for the husband or for the wife. Because we're not looking for beauty, we're not looking for sex, we're not looking for love. We're looking for a spouse, a soulmate, the other part of my soul. And if you're not the other part of my soul, then I can admire you for all your virtues and for all your talents, but you're not for me. That's a much more healthy lifestyle. A 50-year-old woman should not feel threatened by a 25-year-old secretary. Can't live like that. It's unfair. It's unhealthy. So let's go back to good old-fashioned marriage. Do it right. Do it with the kindness, the respect, the dignity, and the sanctity that makes marriage a stronger bond. Husband and wife are bonded to each other more deeply than parents and children, than siblings. It's true. There's no deeper bond than marriage, done right. So it's not impossible. It's not even mysterious. It is doable. Our parents did it. Grandparents did it. we can do it too. And our children can do it too. We just have to have the respect, the awe, and the kindness. Shalom Aleichem. How are you? You know, I do a lot of talking, a lot of Zooming, many classes, many subjects, but that's all formal stuff. Hopefully good stuff, but formal. We also have a Wednesday night meeting that's more informal and kind of Hamish. If you want to join us for that kind of an event, interactive, time for questions and so on. If you want to join us for this side of conversation, click on the link below and join us every Wednesday night at 9 o'clock. Well, maybe not every Wednesday night, but we try to make it every Wednesday night at 9 o'clock, a more informal chat, which can be more enjoyable at times than the formal stuff. So check it out. Click on the link and join us. Try it. You'll like it.